are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me today, it's Kevin Durso. You already know who it is. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing well. How are you, Kyle?
Oh, it's good to be back, and it's good to be talking to you. And, man, we have a lot to get into today.
Yeah.
We sure do. And before we do that, make sure to follow the show on Twitter, at YWT Podcast. Kevin's at Kevin_Durso, and we're also affiliated with SportsTalkPhilly.com. I'm switching up the intro a little bit. I'm changing the flow of things. We're on all the social media. Search at Sports Talk or at YWT. You would think it all pops up. We are also on SportsTalkPhilly.com, and Kevin's over there as well. So I don't know. I'm workshopping that. We'll work it out as we go.
Sure.
We got a lot to get into. It's been a while since our last show. We have a tentative return date. About 36 hours after we recorded our last show, Gary Bettman came out and talked about the fact that training camp is going to open tentatively, fingers crossed, on July 10th. And everything we've heard so far is that it's going to be about 3 weeks, and we're looking at a return to play on or around August 1st. Kevin, what are you hearing about that?
Well, it's interesting because, I was having, it's a question I got a lot, which was, so are they moving do they have a plan to move to phase 3? What's the deal with this thing? Are they even going to make the attempt to get there? And as of probably, I guess, what was it? The 11th, I think, was when the news came out.
Yeah,
so
it was almost a month to the day.
As of,
yeah.
Right. But like June 11th was when they actually had the date, the 10th.
Right.
So they gave you about a month of a notice period.
Right.
And it was even down to like June 8th or 9th, and people were still asking that question. And my best answer was, I really don't know the answer.
Yeah, the NHL
literally whatever anybody else knows is what I know.
Yeah, the NHL has played things very close to the chest on this, and they don't make announcements until nothing leaks.
Not really.
Nothing's leaking right now.
About the only thing there's little tiny details that come out to tell you things are still in the works and that there's talks going on.
The big thing I heard was Vegas has been financially secured by the league in terms of hotels
I wouldn't doubt
and
that,
venues.
and I wouldn't doubt that part of it for a second. I think
especially because they got in before Vegas opened back up. You know it.
Sure,
but they called and said, "We need the top 6 floors. Here you go."
Sure. And here's the only problem I have with that at this point is that now I question the safety of anything in certain areas.
Because we've heard recently.
Exactly. We've heard a lot of different things. Yeah. So, let's to start with the actual date portion coming out. I think you look at a lot of other sports, and basketball's done a decent job of this too. Yeah. But let's put it this way. I have to give full credit to Gary Bettman, to Bill Daly, to anybody who worked, Players Association, whatever. They have maintained constant communication and have been on the same page roughly through the whole process. Yeah. And really, realistically, have been transparent. I think everything has been level. Exactly. I know that people, and it was a common joke because everybody turned around and as baseball's going through their whole problem that goes now, obviously it started beyond the pandemic. Now it's back to the pandemic a little bit, but it started beyond the pandemic. It was literally just a money talk. Yep. That was the problem. And everybody turned around and the joke was, well, when you find out that Gary Bettman's no longer the worst commissioner in sports, I kind of don't love that statement because the fact that, listen, I'm not going to turn around and tell you the guy took over as commissioner in 1992.
Right.
And under his watch as commissioner, they had a lockout in 95 that shortened the season. They had a full season lockout in 04-05.
That's the one that
totally canceled the whole season. And they had another lockout in 2012-13 that shortened that season.
It's not great.
3 lockouts in 30 years' time or just about is not good.
No.
Understandably so. But
then you look at baseball, then you look at football, and it doesn't look so bad.
But recently, since that 13 lockout, that shortened season in 13, you're on your way to expanding the league by 2 more teams again. Vegas has been a huge hit.
You've
watched in these 5 years. Let's just say the last 5 years. You've watched the
revenue just explode.
Well, you've watched the fruits of the labor from all of the other expansions. All of a sudden, Nashville's working and Columbus is working, and you go, they are able to sell out their building in the playoffs because
same with Columbus.
Everybody bought in.
Yeah.
It worked.
Recent expansions are succeeding.
And in the same way at the very beginning of his time, which it was coupled with when Wayne Gretzky got traded from Edmonton to LA, and all of a sudden the biggest player in the world is playing in California. Now kids in California want to play hockey.
Yep.
How does, let's just like, one of your stars, and we're going to obviously mention his name again later, Austin Matthews comes from Arizona. Did you ever think you would get a kid from Arizona who says, I want to play hockey?
No.
And that's the responsibility of Gary Bettman and a lot of the other people who've worked with him over those years. So I think he's done a great job because of the fact that not only have they grown the game, but now he's doing a great job in this time because you were hit with something no one's ever had to deal with before.
And they've handled it
And you've
flawlessly.
actually handled it as well as anybody could have asked you to.
Yeah, honestly, I was supremely impressed, and I think we talked about it on the last show, with the draft lottery. Because I was expecting a mess. I was expecting some overcomplicated blah, blah, blah. And it's really not that hard. One of the teams, that quote unquote misses the playoffs. If one of their picks spikes, you do another lottery, all their names get thrown in a hat, one gets picked out. No big deal. It's really not all that complicated. And given the solution they were trying to solve, it's a really clean, simple, elegant solution where your draft odds don't really change. Detroit doesn't feel like they got burned. Ottawa doesn't feel like they got burned with 2 picks in the top 5. It's still fairly, quote unquote, fair as far as the draft lottery goes.
It is. And let's put it this way. I from the very beginning, let's put it this way. Your first glance at it, I turned around and my response was, I'm glad I don't have to talk about it. It doesn't involve the Flyers. I'm glad I don't have to go that far. Only because it's the second one. And let's put it this way. I'm glad you just brought it up because it didn't hit me until right now. We're recording this on Saturday morning.
Yeah.
This is in 6 days. They're supposed to do the initial
run
on the 26th.
The draft lottery in a couple of days.
A week.
We get to see.
And actually, interestingly enough, no one has mentioned it. Everybody's talking about the last thing. It's been low key. Everybody's talking about
the last
training
3
camps
days.
in July. Well, last 3 days, but everybody's talking about training camps in July. Everybody's talking about hub cities being selected by early next week. No one is talking about the lotteries happening. And the lottery could, let's put it this way, how far could this extend? You have the possibility that this is going to happen and someone's going to get pulled that they don't know who it is yet.
Yep.
And then you're going to throw them all back in later.
Crazy. And I love it.
Well, and see, in light of the last 3 days, could you imagine if that happens and now you've got questions about that?
Yeah, that's that's a tough one, and I'm sure they have to have a plan for some sort of redraw there. But
again, the easy thing is still 7 teams are in this thing.
Yep.
And 3 out of the 7 get pulled, and the order, and then
that's the easy answer.
Because then in the event that something happens and you can't get this done, then at least you go reverse order and you can you can find at some point in time, relatively soon, I would imagine too. Like again, if you're going to meet the August point for the season happening, if something should happen that you're not playing, then you at least can probably run the draft in August.
Right.
It's a weird dynamic because at some point in time,
the draft might be during the playoffs.
Well, no, I don't know. It wouldn't be during the playoffs at that point. Like it's either going to be after the playoffs or you're not going to be able to finish the playoffs and you're going to go reverse order of the regular season.
Yeah, you're probably
from
right.
there, and you can move it up to whenever. I mean, granted, you got to give everybody notice because no one has their sights set on it right now. They don't even know when it is.
Right.
Let's say. I mean, we're sitting here talking about this now, and what was it last weekend? By last weekend, we should have known who the Stanley Cup champion was, and we should be talking about NHL awards and getting ready for the draft. And
it is worth mentioning, by the way, that the current NHL schedule with that July 10th training camp date, if everything goes as long as it needs to, the Stanley Cup would be awarded no later than October 5th.
Yeah, something like that. I saw October 8th at one point in time, I think, and it's supposed to meet the guidelines of the NBA doesn't want to do and their final until later than the 12th of October.
Well,
so it's going to fit in line with they still want those 2 sports on the same spectrum in terms of you started here, you ended here, you can start again at this time.
Right.
They're trying not to change that dynamic too much.
I've heard conversation about the NBA trying to restart right around Christmas, if we're talking about that early to mid-October end date, give a little time for the offseason, restart around Christmas. And I've actually heard a little bit of early talk. I don't know if there's any validity to it. I don't know if there's any truth to it. I've heard some conversation about them permanently moving the start of their season back to Christmas and making that their opening day. If they did that, What do you think that does? What do you think that does to NHL numbers, in that kind of fall period?
Well, all right. Interestingly enough, and I plan to write this relatively soon. I mean, I don't know when I'm going to get to it at this point now because the whole dynamic has shifted, and we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
But I had heard something similar for the NHL that they would push back also.
Just permanently?
That this is going to be if everything still goes through, this is going to be their trial run to see if something over the summer works.
Yeah.
And if it does, they have been actually advised for several years that moving the season back and trying to play outside of that
the NBA, right?
Well, not the NBA. No, not to stagger with the NBA, to stagger with football.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. So in other words, they are talking about
you can take baseball's audience easier than you can take football's audience. So going January
kind of to an extent, and not only that, but you're still talking about having your playoff before baseball's playoff.
Right.
Like so they're not talking. They're actually talking about
if you go December to June regular season, say.
Correct.
And then playoffs July, August, September.
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense, honestly.
Well,
I think you'll have a hard time getting players with kids. That's going to be
possibly
a problem. Just in negotiations. If you try to do this permanently.
I mean, let's put it this way. It'll come down to what it always comes down to, and that's money because
like everything else.
In the long run, this is what they've been advised. They're being advised that if you ticket revenues are higher in February and March than they are early in the year.
I know a lot of people
and TV audiences are higher.
Who don't pay attention until the Super Bowl's over.
Exactly.
And then once the Super Bowl's over, boom, the switch flips and they're in.
You guys have plugged this before on the show. When I'm going on and I'm doing 97.3 and doing all the stuff for that, this year was a little different than previous years, but I was not, and I don't want to say it like I don't say it in a mean way at all, but I was irrelevant for their shows until after football was over.
Yeah, because that's just how the audience
There was no reason to talk about it.
Right, and one of the reasons we started the show was the lack of Flyers coverage in sports talk media, and part of that is the fact that nobody pays attention until basically the trade deadline.
Well, and here's the thing. There's one part of it that is no one pays attention until after football. There's another part of it that was, at least around here, you had about a decade's worth of mediocre hockey. And I'm sorry, when the Eagles are still competing and the Phillies were hovering in that bubble at the beginning of that time and eventually became that team, and the Sixers
there was
got
a year
better.
Or two where it was real bad, but
right. As everybody else was doing something else to change the dynamic, the Sixers got better. The Eagles won a Super Bowl.
The Flyers kept trading for mediocre guys at the deadline.
Well, and the Flyers were trading away players at the deadline and being sellers all the time. And there wasn't that moment that would really bring people like this year. It changed. This year they got people's attention much earlier.
And you know what? It's not fair to him, but Nolan Patrick could have been that. If you look back, the team was never bad enough to get a high pick, never good enough to make a deep run. That's the time you just missed the playoffs. You spike. This is when you're supposed to add a stud. Right. This is when you're supposed to add Jack Eichel or Patrick Laine or one of these guys. And again, it's not fair to Nolan Patrick, but he hasn't been that.
Right. Well, and you got to put the reasoning behind it, which is, I'd say 90% of the reason is that he hasn't been out there, period.
And that's the reason he was the questionable number one the year he got drafted. That's the reason he didn't go number one, was because he was hurt in his draft year too.
Right. And no one, and see, that's the thing. No one is going to fault the Flyers, or you shouldn't fault the Flyers for taking him.
No, it was right pick.
Like, he was the right pick at the time because he was still a consensus top 2.
Yep.
And I don't care how good, like Elias Pettersson went 5th. I don't care how good Elias Pettersson is. He's great for Vancouver, no question about it. But you did not know that at the time. He emerged quicker than expected, and there wasn't supposed to be anybody who came out of that draft that was realistically going to be able to play in their first year out of the draft, aside from those top 2.
Yep. And
okay, so Pettersson has probably passed Nolan Patrick already, and that's fine for now.
Not probably.
Yeah, well, no, it's definite. You can't miss a whole year.
He's got a whole extra season on him at this point, right?
Right. Well, and I think actually now their playing time is equal, because I think Pettersson came a year later, but that's beside the point at this point. Pettersson still probably played more games.
He's far surpassed his productivity. I'd be willing to bet. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'd be willing to bet.
Well, and look, some of it is Vancouver desperately needed. Like Vancouver is one of those teams that was there for a reason.
There was
they
a
didn't
talent
win
vacuum.
a lot. Well, no, they
Definitely.
didn't win a lottery. They were there for a reason. They had not only did they have a void to fill with that, but eventually.
And then the Sedins retired.
Right. Who walks away, and now you have this big hole at the top. So now he just vaults right to the top.
He just stepped immediately into first line center minutes or first line minutes.
Exactly. And let's be realistic. Nolan Patrick was going to be the third line center this year.
Because he didn't have to. Right. And that's one of those things where the Flyers' depth
and
might have hurt his development a little bit because he didn't have that, he wasn't getting the puck all game like he's used to in junior.
Well, and in fairness too, like we can sit here and talk about Nolan Patrick like that and say, well, you haven't been the productive guy that everybody thought you would be as a number 2 pick.
Right.
Nico Hischier's been good. I'm not
good.
saying he's not been good,
but
where is that?
Right.
No, but where's that team right now?
Bad. They're back down in the lottery.
Exactly. They don't even know when they're playing another game because they're not even on this 2014 radar.
For 6 months. Right. At least.
So where? Yeah, exactly. So that's the point. Like, so where is he now? Like even Vancouver was not projected. I believe they were one of the teams out, right? They made it by virtue of the 24.
Right. And I wasn't saying that as a knock on Nolan Patrick because, like, again, a lot of it is beyond his control. The migraine thing, that's all beyond his control. The injuries, there's nothing you can do about it. And when he's been here, I have seen nothing but hustle and effort and skill from the kid.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, he's given it all. It's not his fault. He's not Patrick Laine. You know what I mean?
Correct. And, I don't find that he wants to be good.
Yes.
And well, not only that, but you know what? The hard part for somebody like him as a number 2 pick, especially, and maybe someone who in his own mind thought he was going number 1, he might have. It's hard not to listen to that. You play your entire year being told or not being told, but the news is you're going to be the number 1 pick.
Right.
And you are on the cover of every draft guide. You're on the cover of every junior magazine.
The guy.
You are the guy in juniors right now.
You're in the line of Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews.
You're the guy being
there.
talked about. And even if you're not that skill level like those guys are,
you
are the guy who's getting the talk.
You're going to be compared to them.
It follows you. He actually, in the weirdest sort of way, it prepped him for playing in a city like this.
You're probably right.
The attention is high.
He's got a chip on his shoulder too.
That coming in, no matter what.
I wonder if that first game against the Devils had a little extra heat in his head.
It might have.
I'm sure it probably did.
Well, and here's the thing. But when you've been told, or not even been told, but when you've played and it comes so easy, I don't remember the exact number at this point because it's been so long since we were leading up to his draft year. But his numbers in juniors were ridiculous. Exactly.
Absurd.
And sometimes that's a product of the game being so easy at that level that you don't realize what the difficulty of transitioning is, and not just transitioning, but going directly from juniors to the NHL. Like there's a bigger dynamic.
I was going to say, I don't like the rule. I have a problem with the rule because I think the Flyers were in a tough spot the year they were thinking about sending him back. They ended up keeping him fairly late in camp.
Right.
And I think they were really considering sending him back. And I think if him going to the AHL and starting, getting the Joel Farabee treatment, I think the Joel Farabee treatment would have worked wonders. Send him down, let him score 3 goals in his first 4 AHL games, and then call him up, and boom, he's got the confidence. He's off to the moon.
Right, and Joel Farabee is a unique case because obviously as a college player, you just choose. You say the word.
You just do whatever you want.
No, but all you have to do is say the word pro, and you're now allowed to do whatever you want to across the scope of professional sports at that point. Like in other words, if you can play in the NHL,
the
or you can play in the
is
AHL.
Wild.
Right, like maybe that's good news for the Flyers because they moved him. No, they moved him in the way that they needed to.
Yeah,
all right, we're going to start you here. No, we're not quite going to do it. You had a great camp, but you're going to the minors. You're back up quickly. You're back down.
If you think about recent Flyers draft picks, a lot of college guys. You look at Jay O'Brien. You look at some of these guys who have been sent to, U.S. colleges, or they're all in the system, so that the Flyers can kind of pluck them out whenever they want.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the college thing is you can pluck them out after their freshman year, or after their sophomore year, or after their junior year, or you can let them ripen all the way to the end of their senior year.
You can, and they've done a good job. Like that's the one thing that I noticed throughout the process of all of this uncertainty that's going on is Chuck Fletcher got busy with the, we're going to make sure Tanner Lashinsky is going to be part of this system, and Wade Allison is going to be part of this system.
I'm excited about Wade Allison, by the way.
I'm excited about him too. There's reason to be, and
I'm really excited about Wade Allison.
And guess what? There's reason to be excited about Tanner Lashinsky too. And Tanner Lashinsky was a 5th round pick who nobody probably thought anything.
He's at Michigan.
He was Ohio State.
Ohio State. Okay, I knew it was Big Ten.
And I mean, it was weird because I believe it was the same year that Carter Hart was in World Juniors and lost in the gold medal game.
Okay.
They had a shootout against the U.S. Lashinsky was part of that U.S. team.
Okay.
But never really didn't play the same amount. Like, he was one of the lower guys on that group. So he was I think you were allowed to dress a certain number for juniors that you're not for the NHL.
I think they were allowed to dress like 7 or 8 defensemen. And
I remember honestly, he didn't touch the ice for the last, and they went, they play, what was it, a 10-minute overtime, maybe a 20-minute overtime before that shootout?
Like that. Yeah.
So he didn't touch the ice for the last 40 minutes of the game at least. He's the 13th forward or beyond.
But he's come a long way since then.
Oh, he's come a very long way. And it started because he had a really solid freshman year at Ohio State, got on the radar a little bit, and then all of a sudden turned into a guy that people were talking about for the Hobie Baker.
Yep.
I don't think he was ever a finalist for it, but he was always on the radar. So to an extent, so was Wade Allison. He was always a guy that was talked about at his school. He was their guy at Western Michigan.
Yep. He was the guy everyone gets behind as maybe he can, get a nomination.
Yeah. And Wade Allison's biggest problem was injuries. That was his biggest problem. Lashinsky was never hurt at any point. He would just play for this. He played for one of the big schools. He played well. He was a leader for them, and that kind of thing. So
for sure,
it makes a lot of sense. And they're guys who they haven't written off their possibilities of playing at the highest level as early as next season, whenever that may be.
It is weird watching that change a little bit in the NHL, because for a while you got drafted, then you went back to juniors, then you spent 2 years in the AHL, then you came to the NHL. Then a couple years ago, there was this rush where everybody was just going straight to the NHL.
Yeah.
And it's weird to see a little bit of kind of a pullback where some guys are going, no, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to mature a little bit. I think you're going to see it as time moves forward. I think you're going to see it out of goalies, and you're going to see it out of defensemen. Because you are already starting
to see it with goalies a little bit, because I don't know that anybody thought that
Spencer Knight's going to Boston College all 4 years, probably.
He might. But the guy that's popping into my mind is Kaden Primo.
Yeah.
Kaden Primo was a 7th round pick, and
he looked
within
like
2 years he was up.
Yep.
And they are. I heard this the other day. I heard an opinion from someone the other day, and I don't doubt it for a second. This is the guy that is going to take Carey Price's place.
This is the heir. Yep.
This is the heir apparent who they're just grooming him until Carey Price decides he's done. And
I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to decide he's done, because there's a long time left on that contract.
Well, I agree with that to an extent. Well,
I don't know if Carey Price is going to decide he's done.
Well, I'm saying done also in the terms of they can keep him around and slowly do, they can kind of do the Lundqvist thing, so to speak. And
the problem is there's 6 years left, making, I think, 11. It's a long time left on that contract.
He won't make it through the whole duration of the contract, probably. Right. But I'm saying, year 2 or 3 of it, you start to bring the kid in and you just work him into that system, and you kind of split the time for a little, and then it's here you go. You've got
Kaden Primo is going to be a very good NHL goalie.
Kaden Primo is a very good goalie, and he's got the makings of a good one.
Yeah, and that hurts me, because they're just going to have how do you just have a good goalie for 20 years? You're not allowed to do that.
Well,
you can't chain Carey Price into Kaden Primo. That's not fair.
Well, I don't know that Kaden Primo is going to live up to what Carey Price is. I mean, Carey Price is the all-time leader in wins for that franchise. And consider that, and if you consider the names that they've had, all the way back to Jacques Plante leading and going further, where you go Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, Patrick Waugh.
I was going to say, Patrick Waugh is the third name you mentioned on that list? Okay.
Well, I went chronologically.
Okay.
That was the only reason I did that. He's one of the first that comes to mind. But
sure.
and look, it's hard to pick a first out of that. You know what I mean? Like, geez, who do you pick first when you say Jacques Plante, Ken Dryden, or Patrick Waugh?
It's Jacques Plante for trailblazing. It's Patrick Waugh if you're talking about the actual best player. In my book.
It's fair. I mean, and Dryden doesn't get the love that he probably should because Dryden had such a short career. No, he had such a short career too. He didn't play as many games, so his win totals are not near as high.
All right, but either way,
it's an interesting dynamic.
You get to go from Carey Price to Kaden Primo. That's like going from, Marc-Andre Fleury to Matt Murray to Tristan Jarry. Because I don't know if you've heard, but it seems like the Pittsburgh Penguins have soured on Matt Murray a little bit and are considering Tristan Jarry as their guy.
Well, and it's hard to argue with, like, Jarry has been really good, and Jarry made an all-star team. And look, maybe he didn't legitimately make it because he was more of a replacement than he was actually selected. But regardless, he had the numbers to be an all-star, and he was really successful in the AHL for a lot of years, and he does have the makings of being one. I don't, I can't put the Penguins on the same level as the Canadians in terms of historic goaltending.
No.
The Penguins, Fleury was that we've had this discussion before about Fleury, and I don't need to go all the way back into it. But Fleury has been excellent throughout his career and has Hall of Fame credentials. No question about it. I don't know how far back I have to go to find the next guy. Like, to me, I think I have to go back to Tom Barrasso to find the next guy.
I don't think is Tom Barrasso in the Hall of Fame?
He's not in the Hall of Fame, but I'm saying to find a guy.
He should be.
To find. Well, he's. It's definitely a discussion. I wouldn't. Let's say I wouldn't dispute it if he made it.
Does he have the high level numbers?
I don't know if he's got the high level numbers, but he was a name that was, especially early in his career, was putting together winning streaks the way that Carter Hart has. He was the goalie for the back-to-back cups they had in the 90s.
Right.
And you've got that.
Although I think that one had a little bit more to do with Mario and Jaromir than Tom Barrasso.
Well, full marks, I mean, I wouldn't doubt that for a
credit
second.
Where credit's due here.
Sure, of course. I mean, they had a good team, no question about it. It's just, he does fall into that discussion. I don't even really remember the Tom Barrasso Pittsburgh years. I remember him way further down the line.
Sure.
But he does have.
You don't remember him wearing that awful fade to blue Pittsburgh jersey?
No, I don't remember him wearing the awful fade to blue one. I do remember him wearing the Penguins version of the Rangers jersey that has Pittsburgh going diagonally.
Oh my God.
I do remember that, or at least I've seen pictures of that.
Unpopular opinion: if you spell your city down your chest as part of your jersey, it's a bad jersey. And yes, that includes those awful knockoff Winter Classic Flyers jerseys that were going around for the first Winter Classic. Those are terrible too. If your name is diagonal like a sash, your jersey is terrible. Change my mind.
I'm not going to change your mind with it. There's a couple of them there's several of them I don't like that I've heard people do like.
It's a cop-out. Get out of my face with that.
Let me
wrote a word.
Let me ask you this because it was a question. Let's this way. Over at 97.3, one of the things they've been doing for the last few weeks while there's been no live sports to really talk about has been they've come on, they've done a top 5 list every single day.
Oof.
And but on varying topics that are not just sports related. Like sometimes you'll get a
top
TV
5
topic.
movies, top 5 comedies.
Right, you'll get a top 5 TV topic of some kind too, just to balance it out. But one of the ones that they did for sports, and it actually stemmed from
we're about to talk about whatever topic you're bringing up, right?
We're going to go into
it.
I'm asking because I've already given my list.
Okay.
I'm sure you may have seen it at some point, possibly, because I did tweet it. But
maybe.
Okay, even if you haven't, it's fine.
Right.
It was a while ago. Nonetheless, so they actually stemmed this from when The Last Dance was on ESPN because they started with that. Okay, Bulls 90s, right? They do a list of 90s NBA jerseys and later shifted it to 90s NHL jerseys.
Ooh. Are we doing best or worst? There are some winners in both categories.
I guess you could either call it the best or your favorites. I did it based off of which ones I liked. And I probably
the LA
had
Kings Burger King jersey in the 80s.
Which one?
The Burger King jersey.
What are you talking about? Oh, LA?
The LA Kings. That was the 80s, wasn't it?
Which one are you thinking of? Are you thinking
the
purple
Burger
and gold?
King jersey? No. Type in LA Kings Burger King. The one with the king on the chest.
Oh, that god awful alternate?
Yeah, the king and
that was mid-90s. That was mid-90s. That was mid-90s because Gretzky wore it.
And the purple fading hook through the side. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, I do know. I wanted to make sure that was one you were thinking of.
That jersey is the best train wreck that has ever stepped foot on the ice. And I say stepped foot on the ice because there's only one that's better. And it's the trumpet trophy. It's the trumpet jersey. The St. Louis Blues Jazzman with the trumpets all over it. that the players refused to wear so it never saw the ice.
You think that's the only? Well, I'm trying to put some.
I
other ones
love bad jerseys.
Well, I'm trying to put other ones
jerseys.
into categories because I mean the one that I point out the most in terms of bad was oh my god, I'm so well one of them I don't like, and it was mentioned in one of the lists was Boston's alternate with the bear on it.
The bear? Oh my god, the big bear is awful.
Oh, I know which one I'm thinking of now.
It's awful.
The Islanders fisherman
the fisherman's
jersey.
Great, dude.
Oh my god, the numbers on the back are awful though.
Okay. The correct answer, by the way, the correct number one answer.
Yes.
It's a tie.
Okay.
Between the Kachina.
It's my number one. You got it.
And the white Mighty Ducks jersey.
All right.
Those are the answers.
All right, hang on a minute.
Everything else is secondary.
The white Mighty Ducks jersey, I only put on my honorable mentions.
Wow.
List. I know.
It is the cleanest jersey in history, and I love it.
Well, look, here's the thing. I even put out there at some point in time, my entire list of 5, I either out most of them and a handful of honorable mentions, I either owned the jersey when I was growing up or I've come to like it now because there's a version of it now.
Okay.
That I see more regularly.
The Kachina is so nice.
I had one. I still love those jerseys. I want them to go back to those full time.
I think they're going to wear them for the playoffs.
I think they are.
There's a little bit of talk, but I think they're going to do it.
No, I think they definitely are.
I think
so that was my number. That was my
number. The
Hurricanes
one. Are going to wear their black one, but if you wear the black one that says Canes across the chest, you know my opinion on it.
Well, I will tell you right now, I did not have any jersey that spelled out their letters.
I think the most egregious was Tampa Bay. In the mid 2000s, they had it where one that said Tampa Bay and then another that said Lightning. And they had a home and away of the one that said Tampa Bay, I believe, if I recall correctly.
Either don't they still have it, or maybe it was more recent than that. They had one that said Bolts going down.
Oh yeah, Bolts. Okay, listen, honestly,
that was awful.
You know what? I don't mind if it's just horizontal across the belly.
Yeah, that's not bad.
I hate the diagonal across the chest. So bolts across the belly, I liked that. It was a clean black jersey with white bolts. I kind of dig that.
Okay, do you hate it with one exception then? Because like the Rangers jerseys are classic, so the Rangers have been doing it forever.
I still think it's lame. Like I get their history behind it, but I still think it's lame.
Well, no one's asking you to love the Rangers jerseys anyway, but that's not the point.
Honestly, I much preferred the Rangers jerseys I love the Lady Liberty jersey.
I almost thought about putting it on my list in the 90s because I did like it too.
Wasn't that 2000s? Wasn't that part of the
it was late 90s, maybe even
I thought that
2000s.
Was the same year the Flyers had the Chrome logo, and I know that was like 2004.
No, the Chrome logo came a little later.
Push.
The Chrome logo came a little later.
Okay, but either way, I love the Lady Liberty jersey out of the Rangers. So it's not that I hate all Rangers jerseys, but that one in particular.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, let's put it this way: I would never put a team's jersey on a list of hey, what are my favorite '90s jerseys that didn't offer some form of uniqueness to.
Totally.
Well, like, listen, I don't have anything against the Detroit Red Wings jerseys or the Toronto Maple Leaf jerseys. They're just unchanged. Like
I like the St. Pat's jersey. I do.
Well, here's the thing:
because I'm very Irish.
Okay, it's fine. And the Montreal Canadiens have a very classic jersey. It's been around forever.
Except for that Winter Classic jersey.
Winter Classic the Winter Classic. You take everything out of consideration. You know
Stripes,
what I mean?
Head to toe, brown gloves. Yeah.
Well, regardless.
If you guys haven't seen that jersey, please go look it up. Not safe for work.
Yeah,
it's that ugly.
See, isn't it great that when we were working on those lists of 90 jerseys, there was no Winter Classic or Stadium Series to go to.
No,
they're making some jersey for one special use. Like, come on, but that's my point. Like Montreal, it's such a classic look that it's not necessarily one that I go, oh, it's going to the top. But I don't hate it. Like it's a classic jersey.
But if you're picking your top 5, you're gonna pick. Exclusive items here. Things that you can only find.
You nailed the number one. Phoenix is the number one for me. I love those jerseys. My number 2 was Dallas's jerseys from the late 90s with the star design.
Oh, okay.
Well, do you think I'm doing the Constellation jersey?
Yeah, you're not going with the Muteris?
Oh my God.
What's wrong?
I got to hold on because I think I've said this on the show.
That's another one for our listeners to look up. If you don't know the Muteris jersey.
Go look it up and not only go look it up, But I think I've said on the show before, my favorite player growing up was Mike Madano.
Yeah.
Who also on Twitter called it out as the
He called it the Mooterus. And by the way, that is spelled MOO-TERUS.
Oh, it was so
Mooterus.
like honestly, tweet or type that, Google that, and
it will come up.
And put Mike Madano next to it, and it might bring the tweet up.
It's so funny. It will.
Like,
I'm
honestly,
sure it will.
He did say this.
Oh,
so
it's the most hilarious thing.
No, I'm talking about if I'm being very specific, the jerseys they wore when they won the cup in '99 on the road.
Oh, okay.
The green with the black.
Not the one that says Dallas.
No, I'm talking about the one it has that classic the Stars logo from when they made the move.
Right.
And then it has actually the star design built into the bottom.
Right.
Love
those.
Right.
That's a really nice jersey.
That was my 2. My number 3 was Colorado, the original Colorado Avalanche jerseys.
That's fair.
Love those. I had one of those.
See, I'm a fan of specific jerseys, like single time, third jersey, alternate type thing.
Okay.
The only standard home jersey on this list, I guess the Kachina was too. Man, maybe I don't just like standard jerseys. Maybe I don't just like special jerseys. Maybe I do like standard jerseys. Okay, I like the Kachina.
Okay, well, it's weird. It's weird because like the dynamic for what I had, like what I owned growing up.
Yeah.
I had the Kachina one in black because I liked the road one better. But
I
had Colorado.
But
I had the Colorado Avalanche in white as their home jersey at the time. I had the Ducks one in white as their home jersey at the time.
100% the correct answer. It's the one they wore in the movies.
Yeah.
Is the correct answer.
And I didn't hate the purple ones either, by the way.
Yeah, the eggpant's not bad.
But the white was sleek. It was good, that was awesome. And then what was the other one I was gonna say? Well, I did throw a flyer one onto my list because
Is it the black one?
Well, I collectively put the white, orange, and black.
Okay.
That was all in the same style from the 90s because I just loved how I thought that's a clean jersey. It's clean. It's probably the cleanest one I've
When I think of John LeClair, I think of that jersey. Or when I think of that jersey, I think of John LeClair. For whatever reason, they're just.
But see, and you just nailed it because that was my guy growing up. Like I love John LeClair, and that was it. And I'm like, it's funny that you say that because I don't even think of the black jerseys when I think of that. I just think of him the white jersey with the black A on it.
When I think of the black, I think of Andy Delmore. And I don't know why, but he had that one really good
playoff overtime goal in it.
He scores, Delmore.
No, he did, and then at home he had a hat trick in it, in
his rookie year.
Yeah.
Yep, Andy Delmore, the original Billy Lano.
Who, by the way, again, like you can pull out. I'm telling you, pull out any classic name, you'll find them working somewhere. Andy Delmore was working for Nashville recently.
And you know what? Billy Lano leads me cleanly into Buffalo because we do have to talk about Buffalo.
Okay.
Because after he left here, Billy Lano went to Buffalo. So obviously, my mind,
Yeah.
I've heard a rumor that they're considering bringing him back. I'm not joking.
To play?
He's still playing in Europe. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I didn't really have a where are they now on him lately. I haven't thought of that.
Either way, if you somehow missed it, the Buffalo Sabres fired their GM, Jason Botterill, on Wednesday.
They fired him, or honestly, they put together a laundry list.
Well, I mean, they fired everybody, but he's kind of at the head of it.
Yeah, but it was funny. Did you see the I guess I don't know if it was one of the IT guys, but got fired and got rehired, and someone tweeted it out and said something about, well, hey, so we're firing this guy, all these guys, right? And then someone goes, hold on, that guy has all the passwords though. Okay, you're rehired.
Oh, yeah, you got to get that. Yeah. It was definitely, we're firing that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy and okay, we'll rehire.
Yeah, hold on, we'll rehire you. But and look, that whole thing is a shame because of the fact that that's an entire scouting staff that just got let go. Yeah, that's craziness.
Before a draft.
Right.
When you're going,
their work for the draft is relatively done.
When you're going to have a top 7 pick, they have their pick in this year's draft, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a top 7 pick and no scouting staff. Okay, that's a bold strategy. We'll see if it pays off for them.
Yeah, right.
But either way, they have the Pegulas have handpicked their GMs. So the Pegulas are running day-to-day operations in Buffalo now, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that was crazy though.
They have stated that they don't want, quote, hockey people. So that'll go well when they're running their hockey team.
Oh boy.
They haven't
how long does Jack Eichel last?
Oh, not long. They have not made the playoffs since the Pegulas took over in 2011. When they took over, that season was the highest win total that they've had under the Pegula's regime.
Yeah, the year they took over was the year they lost to the Flyers in the playoffs in the first round.
That's the last time they've made it. And they have not had that many wins since then. So it's been a decade of not even mediocrity, just badness. Like, I don't know how to say badness, but
it was one of the, and it was, let's just say, it was one of the years we didn't really talk about much in all of the history stuff we did on the previous shows. The Flyers probably shouldn't have won that series.
No.
In hindsight, they had to win Game 6 in overtime to get it to 7, and then demolish them in Game 7.
It's a great series.
It's fun. Yeah, it was a fun series, and I believe that there was a few moments, like Game 6 featured a couple of different comebacks at different times to get it to overtime, and then they win it in overtime. And who scored the goal in overtime in Game 6 to get it to Game 7? By the way,
I don't remember.
Oh, Ville Leno.
Oh, was it Ville Leno?
Yeah, it was Ville Leno. That's why I'm bringing it up. I wouldn't have brought it up for anything else if I couldn't tie it back in.
Full circle.
Full circle. Exactly.
So I don't think much of what happened in Buffalo over the last 3 years was Jason Botterill's fault.
Probably not.
Does he get another NHL job anytime soon, or is the stench of Buffalo too strong?
I would even question, does he get another job soon? Because I don't know of a lot of teams that are actually looking at the moment. I mean,
after the playoffs, somebody's going to get fired. You know, there's always, I'm asking if he gets a job, say, in the next 2 years. A lot can change.
I could see it. I mean, let's put it this way: Ray Shero got fired by the Devils earlier in the year, and nobody saw that coming either.
Right. Or do you think he has to step down and take an assistant general manager position somewhere and kind of work his way back up?
I could see him going back to an assistant role. Right. And not only that, it's not even just I can see him going back to an assistant role. I can see him going to an assistant role because that's where he'll fit in. I mean, like, let's this way. I don't find it to be much different from what happened to Ron Hextall. Like Ron Hextall had to take that step back and go to, actually, believe it or not, Chuck Fletcher's the same situation. You lose the GM job at a team that you've been with for a little while, and you have to take that step back and be either a senior advisor or an assistant or something before you get to take the next step.
Right.
And that makes, I think so. I could see it being that way, that he has to take that step. But
I completely agree. I think it's when you see the return they got for Ryan O'Reilly.
Yeah.
When you see the return they got for Evander Kane, when they trade for Wayne Simmons at the trade deadline because they think they're buyers this year, there's just a certain number of decisions where it almost looks like they're trying to buy players to keep Jack Eichel happy, when really what they should do is blow it up and be bad for 2 years. And
let's put this
actually just try to be good.
And let's put it this way, to really jump all the way back, and I can't believe it feels like it's been this long that we're going to talk about it, but can we rewind all the way back to December when the Flyers when the Flyers play Buffalo and Jack Eichel takes warm-ups and then you find out he's not playing.
Yep.
And you took him out of the equation and that team had nothing.
The Flyers just trounced them. It wasn't even.
I mean, that was a skill show at that point. They put on a clinic.
That was an NHL team playing an AHL team, and it was very clear.
And don't get me wrong. There's guys on that team that I think still have something.
Rasmus Ristolainen has some talent. Rasmus Dahlin is still a very, very good player.
Dahlin's still very good.
Casey Middlestat still a skilled player.
I think Olofsson's going to be good.
They'll add Dylan Cousins next year.
And Olofsson's pretty good too. I like him.
Yeah.
And he was generating some buzz as a rookie, which is,
But Buffalo still has a long way to go because Carter Hutton is not an NHL goalie, in my opinion.
Well, let's put it this way: they had Robin Lehner for a long time, and then he makes one move, and all of a sudden his career is totally changed.
I wonder if if we're gonna rewind and play the what if game. I wonder if he gets help earlier, if he stays in Buffalo.
Yeah, Eichel?
No, Robin Lehner.
Oh, I can see
it. If he gets help with his off the ice issues earlier, I wonder if he stays in Buffalo.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. At some point in time, that's got to be part of the equation, though. Too. That's got to weigh. I mean, let's do this way: if it's weighing on Jack Eichel, which it clearly is, a lot of people have said it, and I don't disagree. Credit to him for speaking his mind and being truthful about it. Like, I don't want to lose anymore.
No, and we heard similar. A lot of what he's saying sounds like what we heard out of Connor McDavid last year.
Right.
If you remember, after the season last year, Connor McDavid, there was a lot of I'm sick of losing.
Right.
There was a lot of I want to win. There was a lot of that, and we're hearing kind of similar things out of Jack Eichel. Now, turns out, winning in Edmonton, they're a pretty good team out west, and they're definitely in a playoff spot. That kind of solves a lot of issues, and we haven't heard much out of McDavid. But last year, he was starting to kind of sound the bell, and there was some early speculation on, well, when is he going to ask for a trade? Because how long can you lose? We've talked about players hitting their max earning capacity now.
And it sure sounds like, it's Edmonton to me feels so similar to the Flyers in the sense that it started to feel like it was going to become a case of, all right, fine. You don't like the way things are going. Here's a new coach. And if this doesn't work, then we start moving players. Then say goodbye to some of the Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is the guy who comes to mind for me. Here's a guy who's been there for a long time and in the same light as the Jordan Eberles and Taylor Halls who have been moved.
A long line of high draft picks that haven't lived up.
Here is the next guy in line who, if it doesn't work, because you're not trading McDavid. Well, no, you're not trading McDavid. You're not trading Draisaitl.
You can't trade Darnell Nurse, can you?
No, you're not. I don't think you're trading Darnell Nurse either.
I'm sorry, what's his name? The other defenseman they have.
Oh, what? Oscar Klefbom?
Klefbom. That's it.
I thought he actually would have a shot to be traded.
He might have a shot to go. But
because they do like Nurse that much. But
I still think there's something rotten in the Edmonton locker room. Or in the Edmonton organization,
maybe
right? Because you look at Jesse Puljujarvi, and I don't know if that's Jesse Puljujarvi or if that's Edmonton.
I think it's more him than
something's
it is the
rotten
team.
There. Something's
rotten.
I
think it's more him than the team. To be honest with you,
I don't know, man. The team really jerked him around. So
they did, but that's what let's just say that's the Pete Chiarelli days. That's a different coach. If you haven't gotten it by now, everybody else seems to have bought in, and Draisaitl has emerged as the MVP candidate this year, not McDavid.
Oh well, I mean, I have issues with how the Hart Trophy is awarded, but
we all can say that. I mean, I don't know,
But either way,
who won it 2 years ago again?
It's Taylor Hall, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Are you talking about the year Taylor Hall won it?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly,
I'm not trying to say Taylor Hall wasn't a deserving nominee, but I don't know if he should have won it.
I think that was the best application of that trophy in recent years because that team without him doesn't win more than 25 games.
Sure. I don't disagree with that, but
that team to the playoffs. And in my opinion, that is most valuable.
Oh, that is most valuable. And that's why I've liked people who have actually mentioned, this year, when people had originally mentioned Eichel, when people had mentioned – and Eichel, it's hard to give it to Eichel because they didn't make the playoffs. But now that you know the situation, Panarin's a great name for it. Because, without him, do the Rangers even get into the conversation?
I agree.
Probably not. And he had a tremendous year. And it's funny because Panarin's not even sometimes – I know he's on the Rangers and don't get – I'm not trying to say I don't –
He's the only reason they're in this faux playoff thing.
I don't completely agree with that, though. And I say that because I say it as I really like Zibanejad, and Zibanejad's scoring spree at the end of the season made a huge difference to me.
I wonder if that steam runs out. I wonder if time is up on that Cinderella story, for him.
Well, it's
hard to just go from scoring like a maniac like he was to just no hockey 3 months.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think it might be up more than anything is you
Cinderella
were
teams are going to have a hard time coming back.
And it was, were they doing as well as anybody? Sure they were. And you know what? It's why when we were getting down to it and every time we came on here, we were talking about games. It was, that the Flyers beating the Rangers twice in the same weekend was a huge deal because the Rangers were hot. And now, what does this do for anybody? They're all coming back in the same situation. Teams like the Rangers have to try to get it immediately because they're going to play 5 games. That's the whole deal.
I'd be curious to go back and look at all of the playoffs teams' first 10 to 15 games of the season.
That would be really interesting.
Because I think that's going to be an indicator of maybe what teams are going to have an advantage here, what teams can start, what coaches can get teams going at the right time.
I think there's 2 indicators, and one of them is that, and the other one is going to be who had access more or who had more access during this time than others.
Oh, to facilities.
Right. Like,
okay.
It doesn't fall short on me that Ivan Provorov didn't stop skating this whole time and comes back to a facility and goes, I feel great. You know, right. I know other guys have to get it back.
You brought him up. Him up. I'm just going to say it. Ivan Provorov is a handsome man. My goodness, he looks good.
I had to say it when I saw that picture.
I have no shame in saying it.
He is playoff ready. And I'm going to tell you something.
The man is yoked.
Well, and I'm going to tell you something. I was never totally a fan of the beard for him, and not the way it is now. Hold on. Because I'm looking at him going, he's 22 years old, and I'm going, no. And I'm like, you kind of look like you can't grow one yet.
He did. He couldn't.
And maybe it's because he would only let it go for so long and then get rid of it again and then come back later. And
listen, as a man who's working on it.
He let it grow, but he let it grow that entire time over this whole isolation period. And he comes back looking like he's been in the playoffs for the last 3 months. He looks great.
And he better not shave.
Well, he's got the beard going. The flow is ridiculous.
It looks fantastic.
It looks great.
He fits awesome. Right in with Nolan Patrick and Travis Konechny.
That's the next one I got to see.
Travis Konechny is going to show up. Travis Konechny is going to show up. It's going to be great. I don't know what's going to go on.
Well,
you saw that Sean Couturier shaved, correct?
Yeah, and I was surprised.
Ooh, he looks like a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
He looks like He looks like the same kid from that 2012 playoff series against the Penguins.
He does it regularly enough, though, that it's not surprising me.
Yeah.
Like, I've
seen him do it. Jake does it.
Well, you know what? Well, if Jake comes back shaved, then we got issues, I think. You know,
he's done it before.
I can't see him doing it at this stage of the season, though. Not for a playoff.
I don't know, man. He might.
He doesn't.
Okay, but who knows, though? Because no one's ever experienced
Claude Giroux let
this.
his grow in a little bit. I mean, Claude Giroux, the only reason I can say we know that is his wife posts on Instagram.
He's got fatherhood as an excuse here.
Well, but his wife posts on Instagram a lot, and he had it shaved down pretty good. Like, he had it trimmed. It was nice. And he's let it grow in a lot since then.
Yeah, that kid might be mobile now, so he might not really have the option
I think the kid is definitely mobile.
Right. And it's Claude's kid, so he's probably got him on skates.
Oh, I don't know about that yet, but I only say that because I only say that because I don't know how easy it would be. I mean, he tried to take advantage of the only open rink in Ottawa for a day and then got told it was closed the next day.
But he was one of the ones who got that workout in.
Oh, and well, guess what? I know that there's skeptics to some stuff, and I know that there are fears about what could happen with it, and they're all legitimate.
Yeah.
No question about it. The day that they turn, or the day after that date for training camp came out and phase 2 was opening, he didn't come to Voorhees yet. And that's fine. He doesn't have to.
No,
but
totally.
he was on his way somewhere because the car was packed and there were a ton of sticks in the back of the car.
He was on his way to ice. Somewhere.
He was on his way to somewhere where it's go time. They said the word go.
Some state that's open. Yep.
Well, either that or somewhere in Canada that might be, because
maybe he's on an ODR somewhere, just tearing it up outside in somebody's backyard.
I'd love it if it was. That would be so
I want to
cool.
see video. The one thing I hope, and I was actually talking to producer Mike about this the other day on the phone.
Okay.
I hope somebody in the NHL, assuming that we get to come back July 11th, assuming that we get games on or around August 1st, assuming that we award a Stanley Cup here, right. I hope that some number of players are smart enough to document the hotel experience. Smart enough to vlog and get, we talked before the show a little bit about The Last Dance. And I would love to see footage like that emerge from this, of guys just goofing off in the hotel.
Do you know what would be a great idea?
And honestly, I want people, give everybody disposable cameras, stuff that can't connect to the internet, stuff that can't get posted on social media. Take a bunch of footage, bunch of film, bunch of pictures, bunch of content, and stick it in a vault somewhere and forget about it for 20 years.
Right.
That's what
I even think. Here's an idea that I think that might be a good one, and it has to come with the understanding that it's public.
Okay.
Which is now granted, there's players who do it well.
Okay.
So, and I'll give you the best example I can think of for the Flyers case then, because I'm going to give you an example of someone who understands what goes online.
Will it be somebody who recently won the NHL fan poll for funniest player in the NHL?
It is exactly that guy. Give Kevin Hayes a phone or access to an account where you are getting the access.
The NHL has done that before. You'll see on their page where somebody gets a takeover day or whatever, and they'll post some stuff.
And give a player an opportunity to do it for the league or do it for his own team and say, you're going to,
it's for a couple hours. It doesn't have to be all the time.
It's very much in the same light as these, hey, it's training camp. Here's a kid who's writing a blog post every day to document the training camp experience from his perspective.
Right.
And it's done in writing. Give him a phone and say, or give him access to an account and say, use your phone. Obviously, there's restrictions on what we can post since you're representing the team. But
I think everything would have to go through the league and get cleared. I think live streaming would be tough.
I don't think it has to go through the league, but it would have to run through
Somebody's got to vet it. Somebody has to take a look at that.
And the only reason I said it that way is because I don't think that a team can send, the team is so limited on who they can send it. I don't think you can send your social media person.
Right. And listen, I've listened
to this.
Right, but live streaming is difficult because, I've listened to enough Spit and Chicklets to know that when hockey players are together, somebody's naked. So
possibly, and someone's usually dropping a few bombs too.
Right. Well,
that was more of my thought, not the
right. Well, right, but you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be some sort of vetting, editing process in place, I think. But I think that would be a lot of fun. And I've heard a lot of talk about this, and I don't think it's actually going to happen. I would pay a large amount of money for any sort of subscription service where I can hear players mic'd up with no fans in this crowd.
Well, you might be able to do that without any help.
I know, but I would love that. To be honest, I think we're gonna hear either fake crowd noise or music, or the mics are just gonna be turned way down. I don't think we're gonna hear much in the way of player audio. I think they're so nervous about it. After the Morgan Riley incident from several months ago, there are incidents all the time about guys getting caught on the cameras, saying derogatory things and blah, blah, blah.
Right. And
that's only what we hear because they're near mics and happen to say it loud enough. When you can drop a pin in that arena, a lot of players are going to get exposed.
And how many of those instances go not completely by the wayside, but
they
get
go under the radar more than
but go missed in the moment because of the fact that not everybody was watching that game.
Yep.
And it's a digging, and by the time you can dig it up, it's not what you expect. Honestly, right. I can't listen. If somebody says something and there's clearly a reason to censor it, it's harder for me to grasp the magnitude of it without hearing it uncensored. To hear, if you hear it naturally, I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear it in that sense.
Right.
I want to hear it uncut the way that it was delivered, because then it hits me in a totally different way.
It creates a different emotional response for sure.
Right. It hits me in such a different way. If someone says, someone says something derogatory in a certain way, especially when it comes to certain elements of life.
Yep.
It's not going to have the same impact to me if you just bleeped it out and made it seem like it was just something wrong with it.
Right.
I get there's something wrong, but I'm going, well, wait a minute. What exactly did he say though?
All right.
I want to know exactly what he said. And I might be able to fill in the blank, but
it's not quite the same.
But it doesn't have the same punch. I need the gut punch that goes, how do you feel after you just heard that?
Right. And
straight through.
But I would, yeah. And I would be interested. And like I said, I'd be willing to pay a subscription fee to hear unfiltered, just mic access.
Well, and here's the thing. I don't 90% of it is going to be funny to me. If someone calls somebody a nickname and throws an F-bomb in front of it,
right,
and says, let's this way, the one that goes around the league a lot is people call, you're a pigeon, and it's a thing. I'd love to hear
Claude
that
would never call anybody such a thing.
Oh yeah.
Never a teammate or anything, a current teammate.
I know. But regardless, I sit there and I go, all right, I got a laugh out of that. It's funny. I enjoyed it. It's sure. It's funny. But then there's other stuff. There's going to be other stuff that comes out that you're going to go, oh my goodness. Did I really just hear that possibly? It could shed a whole complete. I appreciate the sound drop.
Claude Giroux chirping at James Van Riemsdyk. Cooing at James Van Riemsdyk will always be my favorite.
But do you know what I'm likening this to a sense? The NHL Players Association, strictly the Players Association, has, if you go on YouTube and search that, there's a list of videos that Scott Hartnell took on a Flyers road trip, and this is the year that Jágr was there.
I remember this. This is the 2012 year.
Yeah. And but it's behind the scenes stuff. He's taking a video in the weight room.
I think that
he's taking a video. It was the same year as the
They
Winter
did a
Classic.
Road to the Winter Classic that year, right?
No, it wasn't in that though.
No, but it was in that same year. It was
in the same year, yes.
Right.
And like, there's even a video. I don't remember who it was, but something. Craig Berube was an assistant coach at the time because it was Lavi's years.
Okay.
And there's a video of they're in the locker room and there's something about a meatball sub and Berube says that the meatball sub was for Jody Shelley because he played like a meatball the other night, and you can't help but laugh at that.
That's
like
funny.
It's hysterical, and like that's the type of stuff that I would love to see from the players in the hotel experience if you go into this bubble, because I think it's going to find a way to connect. I would love for, obviously, the players are going to, if this is to work, the players are going to do whatever they have to do.
Right.
And
hopefully
everything else is going to be virtual. So don't change anything about the way that the game has been documented in the media in the last few months. Like, let a few guys, like, aside from maybe trying to get that behind the scenes look, let a few guys go on Spit and Chicklets.
Right.
And make appearances during and talk to those guys virtually and give some documentation of it. Tell a few funny stories. This has worked for a lot of different people. Spit and Chicklets has had good podcasts. What was the other one?
I highly recommend going and listening to any episode with Kevin Hayes on it.
Well, exactly. Those are
If you
funny.
haven't listened to Spit and Chicklets, literally go to the page, type in Kevin Hayes, and download all the episodes that say featuring Kevin Hayes.
And I'm gonna tell you right now, I wouldn't be against bringing some people together on that too, because the episode that Kevin Hayes did with Keith Yandel is hysterical,
amazing.
And it's two guys playing for two different teams right now,
and two guys from the same town,
right? But in two completely different scenarios.
They're going to
because
be
one guy's going
to
play. Well, one guy's going to play immediately,
right?
And the other guy is going to have to play round robin,
right?
And that's
by the way, we're definitely getting those games at like noon, right? Because they're going to be early in the early time slots because they don't matter as much.
You know what? Probably, but I'll take it because it'll be something.
It's Flyers hockey.
Exactly. If it goes off, I will take it in a second. Like I want it to happen anyway. So
yeah, and we hope that's the case. But we did briefly touch on player language, and we also kind of mentioned that old hockey team. Did you want to talk about the CHL lawsuit, or do you kind of just want
to not too much? I mean,
okay, we'll touch on it real quick.
And I don't want to talk about it because, first of all, I think a lot of what was out there speaks for itself. It's pretty,
and
it's pretty.
Kind of what I was gonna say is
it's pretty serious stuff to that level.
Yeah,
stuff does happen in locker rooms all the time. Not like that.
I'll touch on it real quick for our fans that don't know. Dan Carcillo has been a pretty vocal advocate. You might remember former Philadelphia Flyer Dan Carcillo. Since he retired, he's been a pretty vocal advocate for head trauma awareness and also for bullying and abuse, specifically in junior hockey. And there have been some stories that have come out that are awful, and we're not going to talk about them really here. You can go look them up if you'd like.
Right. We'll spare the details. Exactly.
They take hazing to an extreme level, and if you know what hazing is, then you know what the next level looks like.
The one story is pretty.
And
I don't know if it's the same one, but I think it was. Let's just realize it involved a laundry cart.
There have been a couple.
That one was pretty telling.
There are a couple that are really, really, really serious allegations, and there's a lawsuit against the CHL, essentially claiming negligence and that they knew and did nothing, and they actively fostered an environment where these sorts of things were possible and took place and weren't fixed.
Right.
And so that lawsuit has been brought up, and there are some really tough reads. So I will caution our listeners, if you look it up, there are some tough stories that have been told. And if you're not comfortable with that, I would avoid those stories and just know that it's terrible. And I hope that things have changed, and I hope that things continue to change, and that behavior is eliminated, because there's hazing and there's some level of, validity to that, a little tiny bit. Hey, make you part of the group, but it's been taken far, far, far too extremely for far too long. And that culture needs to be reined in severely in hockey locker rooms, it sounds like, specifically. And I assume in other sports too, but I don't know from any of them, but
right.
Okay, well, I did want to touch on that before we got out of here, because it's a pretty major story, and I would feel remiss if we didn't touch on it. Before we get out of here, there's really not a ton of Flyer-specific news coming up, right? Pretty much all the news since our last show has been kind of NHL-centric.
Yeah, and I do think we need to – we mentioned way back in the beginning of the show about the other stuff we were going to talk about, Austin Matthews and things like that. I think we should definitely get to that before we get out of here because that's the big story at this point because it's the question mark of all question marks right now. We're talking – the only reason we're talking about hockey happening on July 10th and moving beyond that is because the league has not changed the plan.
Because things haven't changed yet.
Right.
But in case
the bottom line is exactly. Go ahead.
In case you missed the news, on Friday, several Tampa Bay Lightning were diagnosed with COVID, and multiple other players from around the NHL, including Austin Matthews, were also diagnosed.
Right.
I believe it's 11 players total.
It was 11 players total. Now let me
there are multiple
say this.
Staff members.
Right. It was for Tampa Bay. It was 3 players and 2 staff members.
Right. Okay.
Excuse me. And we weren't let's just we shouldn't know that Austin Matthews is on that list. It's a ridiculous that his name came out, and
it's a shame for him.
Well, it is a shame for him, and it's let's just in the NFL. The NFL had a big hit with Texas cities. Houston had a bunch, Dallas had a bunch, and it didn't take long for everybody else to sit there and go, we'll just gloss over whatever number of multiple it is for those 2 teams, but here's one guy in particular that everybody's going to know the name.
Yeah.
They did it for Ezekiel Elliott with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, it's a shame
and
when
they did
you
it with
hear
Austin Matthews.
It's a shame when you hear multiple people tested positive sometimes, and then other times you hear very specific names.
Well, and here's the thing again that kind of puts the NHL in the right frame of mind for it. They're going to issue weekly updates in terms of who's testing positive. Let's put it this way. It's going to happen. It was not going to be foolproof. And let's be encouraged by the fact that 11 players have come back for phase 2, have tested positive, and here's what we can assume.
And we found them.
Well,
and that's a nice thing too. They got diagnosed. That is a nice thing. They had it. They didn't know they had it. Now they know they have it, and they can get whatever
that's
treatment
is necessary. Part. Correct. That's the nice part from the human angle. And we do wish all those players the best. And that's from the human angle because the human angle is you don't want to see anybody get it.
Lives over hockey, 1,000,000%.
Right, and lives are more important.
100,000%. Yep.
That being said, first of all, the damaging part of it for the future of the game is let's just say a team just closed down their training facility.
The Tampa Bay Lightning, yeah.
And that's 1 out of the 24 now that just said, well, we have to shut it down for right now. Now, granted, if they do everything the way that they said they're going to do it,
they still have time to open for training camp.
They might open up on Monday.
Yeah.
And say, we tested everybody else who was here. We did the contact tracing. It's just those 5.
Right.
They actually have to go back and test the 5 again, too, because there are false positives.
Yep.
So I know there's not going to be 5 false positives.
No, there's definitely coronavirus is definitely in that locker room.
But maybe it's not 3 players. Maybe it's 2.
Right.
And it changes the game just slightly. It changes the dynamic just a little bit. That being said, it's still something big, and it closes a team's building down for right now. Does it hurt everything yet? Probably not, because of the fact that not everybody's there.
The nice thing is, even if things shut down for 2 full weeks at this point, if a facility has to close for 2 full weeks at this point, it can still be open in time for that July 10th date. We are not 2 weeks out from that yet.
Correct.
So we still have a little bit of wiggle room here. Now, if a week from now, if we get another pop of cases, things may start to change.
Well, and again, the other thing that you can attribute it to so far is, 3 members of the Tampa Bay Lightning have it.
These are people who are all at home.
Well, no, 3 members of the Tampa Bay Lightning have it, and Austin Matthews has it. And I hate that we know that it's Austin Matthews, but still, regardless. Right. All right, so but you go back and you go, what do we know about those 4 out of the 11? 3 of them are working out in Florida, and 1 is working out in Arizona. And those 2 states are problem areas right now.
Cases are going up.
Guess how many, let's put this way, because guess what? I don't doubt that another team, well, here's the other thing too. 11 players have tested positive. I believe also one of the players is a Boston Bruin.
I heard that too, yes.
I think that's included in the 11. We don't know who it is, and that's fine. We don't have to know who it is.
Well, we know there's people from other teams.
Well, and here's the other thing. We know it's a Boston Bruin, and we don't know where that Bruin is. We don't know that he's in Boston. We don't know that he's in another part of the States.
We don't know if other Bruins have it.
Correct.
We don't know if he was living with other people. Like Boston's a pretty tight area.
Well, let's put it this way. Here's a good example. And again,
with other hockey players.
And here's a good example. Not to put names to anything, but the story that brings out Austin Matthews has it. Says that he was living with Frederick Anderson.
Right.
And Frederick Anderson does not have it and took a test and was negative. That's good news.
Yep.
Like, it does show that there is a way to work around it, that even if they were in contact with him, it doesn't mean you got it per se.
Yeah. And again,
there's a lot of things to go into this. That's fair. Right. I think that what the league needs, and granted, the Flyers have – I don't have a firm number on how many Flyers are in New Jersey right now.
Okay. I imagine it's several.
No, and here's the thing. We've seen certain examples, and it's growing by the day.
We know Provorov's here. We know Couturier is
Ivan Provorov's here. Sean Couturier is here.
We know Shane Gostisbehere doesn't leave. His girlfriend's a nurse in the city.
Here's the thing, though. I haven't actually heard that he is definitely there or not, but we assume he's there.
Well, listen, he's either there or Florida more than likely, and I'd rather him be here.
I think, but I think he's still here because let's put it this way: he got engaged over the quarantine,
right?
And his fiance works at CHOP
as a nurse in the city, right?
Right.
So I imagine he's not terribly far,
right? So that's probably 4. Mark Friedman's there. Sam Moran is there. And in recent days, oh, by the way, we have no location on Kevin Hayes because Kevin Hayes has done interviews with the Flyers in terms of like, he did like
was
a spot.
on Spit and Chicklets recently and mentioned that he was about a month ago and mentioned that he was home in Boston or home in Massachusetts.
I'm talking about
I don't know about since then.
Right. I'm talking about as recently as this week, he was doing interviews for stuff on the Flyers website.
Right.
So he might be back. We don't know that. I feel like if he was back, though, we would have had a picture of him on the ice by now.
It's
like
Kevin Hayes.
Like Nick Aube-Kubel is back, and there was a picture of it proving it. He's on the ice. And Alex Lyon was there yesterday. So I would probably safely tell you there's 8 players who are back in this area.
Is it safe to assume that the Flyers, assuming playoffs happen, of course, is it safe to assume that the Flyers will probably carry Alex Lyon on that roster?
Absolutely, 1,000%.
I imagine so.
They need they're allowed to carry as many goalies as they want. Every team is bringing 3.
Yeah.
Every team is bringing 3 for sure.
I'd be willing to bet 4, honestly, because it's pretty.
I wouldn't surprise me, but
because if you think about it, your first goalie goes down, you're down to your 2.
You're going to need to carry 4 because of the fact that
you have to bring someone into quarantine, right?
Right. Well, here's the other
bringing people into the bubble.
Well, and so here's the thing. In fairness, too. They put down when we got this one. So Alex Lyon is there. Alex Lyon is the first goalie who is in Voorhees. So okay. Carter Hart is still home, and Brian Elliott is still home, wherever that may be. I know Carter Hart's home is just outside of Edmonton.
Okay. So I'm actually kind of surprised he went home. I'm surprised he didn't stay.
I'm not, to be honest.
I'm not faulting him. I'm just kind of surprised that's the result.
No, I'm not though, because I get the feeling that he's
young.
If you were he's young, but not only that, but you're given the option to, I guess, probably live alone in the apartment
Philly,
you have in the city, or go home to your family in Edmonton while you have the time. I think you're going to go home. And not only that, but you know what? His version of training outside of being on skates, you can play that tennis ball game they play before a game anywhere that has a wall.
Anywhere. Yep.
So just get a wall, put a glove on, and say, "Look, I'm just going to do this. I'm just doing the reflexes."
You can get anybody to throw the ball at the wall for you. You don't need a high level coach for that.
They do things that other players, just from a mentality.
Goalies are weird, man.
Like juggling. Like juggling is supposed to help your concentration. It's like, cool, do it wherever you are. And Brian Elliott was an easy one because Brian Elliott has a whole family at this point.
He's got kids.
He's one of the few, and I think I found it interesting because one of the things I thought was interesting is that a lot of the quotes I saw from the Flyers, like Provorov and Farabee specifically,
okay,
who are still very young and don't have that kind of lifestyle yet.
Yeah.
It's, I guess this is just going to kind of be like one really long road trip with the boys, right? It's just going to be a big road trip.
Right.
And we'll get to hang out with the boys and it'll be great, whatever. It's not that way for everybody. Like Claude Giroux just has a son who's about almost a year old at this point.
That's weird.
And James Van Riemsdyk just had a daughter. And Brian Elliott has 2 young kids. You're not going to separate those guys as easily as the others.
It's tough. It's not quite as casual.
But I did the thought process of everybody else, and I'm going, Travis Konechny's going to feel this way. Carter Hart's going to feel this way. They're going to feel like, okay, it's a big road trip. I got to go do it. I got to go do it.
Right. And that's the thing is at a certain point, you kind of just have to do it.
But it actually makes their younger age an advantage because of the fact that they're a
little less attached.
And get this.
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Cool. Whatever.
But get this. I want to go back to something I said about Claude Giroux earlier. They said, let's go, phase 2. And he packed the car with a bunch of sticks all right, I'm going. let's go. I'm ready for this. And I don't know if it has to do with, like I said, I couldn't see. I said this on a spot on 97.3 previously. I can't see the teams at the top, and not just the teams at the top, like where the Flyers are. Like, can you see Sidney Crosby sitting here, who's already won 3 cups, by the way, sitting here saying, I don't want to play for the cup. I gotta stay home. Like, the competitive nature comes out at some point. Ovechkin's won a cup and has 2 kids. Do you think he's sitting there going, I don't want to get back, though?
The second they said phase 2, he was doing power push-ups.
Right. They're still going to do something about trying to get back. They don't want to stop playing. They love to do it.
He's going to be bench pressing on the plane over from Russia. Like, I can see Ovi laying on the private jet, just pumping iron on his way over here with the.
That'd be hysterical.
I want a Rocky IV like Drago training montage.
That would be
Ovi.
pretty funny for him.
Show them injecting him, and then they show him it's saline. But yeah, either way.
That's all of them, though. I mean, Ivan Provorov trains like Kevin Hayes called him an animal.
I think we're gonna have a ton of fun, and I think Ivan Provorov is gonna come back and play 38 minutes a game, and everything's gonna be fantastic.
It might, know.
We're actually gonna get our way out of here. We figured we might as well talk some Flyers here at the end, right?
Exactly, and the point of it is to talk about the fact that this is obviously this is a thing to watch right now as we sit here. We're like I said, we're recording on a Saturday. Friday was a kind of disheartening day because of the fact that this all came out at once, and here's the thing, nothing felt safe anymore in this sense, and here's what I mean when I say that. They started with, and it's something that hits home, which is, it's in the Phillies training complex. The Philadelphia Phillies training complex has 8 known cases, 5 players,
5 of them are
3
Phillies,
staffers. Yep. Okay, it's baseball. You don't put it to the other sports yet, but then all of a sudden it's Toronto Blue Jays workout right 5 minutes from there. They've shut down. Yep. Tampa Bay Lightning. No, Tampa Bay has a problem. Then Austin Matthews has it. And that feels like a gut punch. By the way, there's a football player training just outside of Nashville. He's got it. Now they're checking to see anybody who came in contact with him. Wait a minute. It's to the point where I'm seeing tweets that go, we may never see a sport again. And I think that's a little extreme. I do.
I'm starting to get a little nervous about it. Especially with this sports-centric podcast that I'm trying to run here.
And you're worried about it with a sports-centric podcast. I'm worried about it with a sports-centric podcast and the radio
and also
station
a little bit of a lifestyle.
And a website. Yeah. It's everything.
Oh, trust me, I know.
Well, no, and so someone turns around and you hear, all right, well, maybe we'll just have to get used to the individualized sports world. And then they come out and they tell you a PGA player has it. And you're going, nothing feels safe anymore. Even down to it was the timing of certain things was ironic because the fact that right after you had that thought, well, the individual sports are at least coming back. Maybe I'll have golf. Maybe I'll have golf to watch. Here's a golfer who's got it too. What? What else can you throw at us this year? In that sense. And again, lives are more important, and there's going to have to be a way to deal with it. But honestly, the first thought I had, and this is that I told you this before we started recording, that I had a theory about the way that the NHL has an advantage that nobody else has, and that is the presence of Canada in the sport.
Yeah.
And I say that because
Canada's done a great job.
On Monday, you could come out on Monday, June 22nd, and say, we have to pick Canada as the place to have these games. We have to do it now, and we have to get them here.
The quarantine go.
No, and guess what? Here's the plan. Phase 3 does not become training in your own buildings. It's a joint. We're creating the bubble now.
Yep, you're in the hub.
You're all coming here and quarantining for 14 days, and then you're going to start training camp in mid-July.
And one big thing I think Canadian cities have as an advantage in terms of being hub cities over NHL cities for that kind of plan in an emergency bubble.
Right.
Rinks.
Well,
Canadian
rinks
cities
is important.
will have
Correct.
more rinks.
Rinks is
and
important.
When you have 12 teams in each bubble, they all need to have a training camp.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. There's one thing that I think doesn't work about it, and that's now you're going to tell everybody, stop what you were doing in phase 2, and we're going to come back for phase 3.
Got to do what you got to do.
In the bubble, and you have 3 weeks. And I think that's what's going to be the problem. It's not training in the bubble; it's the timing.
You got to do what you got to do.
So you might be delaying this longer.
Right. But
that's the first concern. Then, but the reasons to do it is first of all, you've got the permission. They've given the okay.
Yep.
Canada as a country has given the okay. Canada also had the uniform policy, whether you were in British Columbia or whether you were in Ontario or Quebec or wherever you were across the country, you had to follow the same. You had to follow the same guideline, and it was that way no matter what. And the uniform policy allows for you to bring everybody back into the same situation. This is the way it has been this time. The numbers have been kept under control because of that, and we feel safer. And like Vancouver is an ideal place to do this because Vancouver is already isolated to an extent.
Yes.
Like there's a lot of open space. It's on its own place.
Yep.
Put a bunch of teams out there to start with. Toronto's trickier, but Toronto, you could do what everybody is talking about doing anyway, which is shutting down a portion of the city and saying it's just for the NHLers.
You think Winnipeg could handle it?
Winnipeg's not even in the running. And Winnipeg probably could. I like Edmonton as an option because Edmonton has that kind of feel to it also.
Right.
But Edmonton, I don't want to pinpoint any of them as 1, 2, or 3. I can tell you this right now. They've wanted a Canada city all along. They've wanted a Canadian city all along.
The NHL wants a Canadian city, of course.
And truth be told, here's the one benefit that the NHL has had. And again, I go back to the stuff with they've handled so much of this the right way in terms of planning.
Totally.
Because now you're the let's shift sports for a brief moment. You're the NBA. And you've done nothing the whole time other than talk. Like you've planned around it. You've created the bubble idea. All great ideas because the concept is if you bring everybody into a bubble and say you're tested before you come to the bubble and you're negative, well then you're not going to get it if you don't go around anybody else who's positive.
Right.
You've created the bubble. All right. And even if somebody does by some slim chance, you can probably limit European soccer has done this, and European soccer created their bubbles and put everybody out there and has had I think I've heard under 10 positive cases the whole time.
Right.
And handled it quickly, and it was never in threat of losing their playing, right? The NBA has talked about creating this bubble, but has the whole time talked about Orlando. It's going to be Orlando. And now Florida is a problem area.
Sure isn't going to be Orlando.
So what do you do? The NHL said, we're going to pick 2 cities to do this.
I wonder if they fall back to Columbus.
That'd be interesting. But the NHL said, we're going to pick 2 cities. And here's a list of 10 we're considering, but we don't feel ready to make this decision yet. We're going to wait 3 or 4 weeks and do this.
That was a great call.
And now you waited 3 or 4 weeks, and what did you find out? Let's put it this way. Are you having it in Dallas, which was on the list? I wouldn't, and I think they've lost. Let's put it this way. I think Minnesota is out. I think Dallas is out. I think Chicago is out, and I think LA is out. For reasons, for various reasons, but mainly because they're too big of cities, and this, and the population could create a problem.
Yep.
Vegas has a good shot because Vegas, that particular area, can become your bubble. But I also fear that this western area is now becoming I'm sure you recall this as well as anybody else does too. When it all started, it was a northeastern problem that spread throughout the rest.
Well, it was northwestern first. It hit Seattle first.
It hit Seattle first, but then all of a sudden
it was New York.
New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and a little bit north of that too. That was the area. And now it's Florida, Texas, California, and it's kind of shifting gears.
Arizona,
too. And my fear is California, Arizona. I don't love Nevada at this point, unfortunately.
No, but I think they're going to get Nevada just because
hotel spacing
makes too much sense. Yeah.
Well, hotel spacing makes it easy because you can put everybody in the same spot.
Well, you know what?
I think Columbus still has a shot. Pittsburgh still has a shot because Pittsburgh is in a state that actually is one of the best at getting it under control.
Yep. And you know what?
And I hate to say it, but
this show is going live at 8 p.m. on Sunday. So at 9 a.m. on Monday, they're going to announce the hub cities. They're
going to do it soon. It could be as soon as that.
Well, no, because this show's going up at tomorrow night at 8 p.m. So it's going to happen Monday morning because I know that's how it works.
You're saying that because I get it. I get you. We don't know that it's going to happen, but if it's in line with anything else that's happened, it's going to happen right after this is over.
So you guys make sure to let us know how wrong we are and how this whole podcast is completely invalidated. And you can let us know on Twitter at YWT Podcast.
You mean what? You mean like the last one? How we were live for all of 12 hours and all of a sudden there was new stuff.
Yep. Make sure to let us know on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Don't forget to follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso and also at Flyerdelphia and at Sports Talk Philly. The show can be found everywhere. Just search YWT or you would think the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. We're also on Sports Talk Philly. Every episode goes up there. Make sure to go check it out. And I don't know, Kevin, anything else?
Nope, that's all I got.
Yep. And we can cut this out if you'd like, but I would like to wish you a congratulations on your wedding. And
no, you can say it. Let's just wait. I got to tweet it out later because I'm trying to hold off because I don't want to do it over. No, I don't want to do it over a weekend where the station doesn't see anything too. Because the station's busted, not like jokingly busted my chops a little bit at certain times and talked about some stuff. We've been trying. Look, listen, you got to have your own fun during this time because there's not a lot to talk about. So. When we ended up not having a show 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And the weekend that we were discussing, and there was a lot of reasons we didn't, but one of them, I turned around, I even said, I typically would have said, I'll sit down, but you know what? We're having a makeshift bridal shower this weekend. It's tough. Whatever. One of the gifts my parents got for both of us is we have custom. Maybe I'll hang them up at some point, but they're for behind me for a show purpose. But we have jerseys that have Mr. and Mrs. Durso on the back with 20s. And we took a picture wearing them. And we're just turned around, so it's just our back, so you can see.
That's awesome.
The whole deal, so it actually spells out 2020 and has both of us like that.
Right, that's awesome.
And I'm putting it out there for that because obviously, let's this way. I'm doing the best I can to keep up with news, and I know there's going to be more coming soon because now this thing is a fluid situation with all these positive tests.
You have other things on your mind.
Well, but I'm saying I'm not even talking about for the early part of next week, but I'm saying the weekend that's after, and maybe the first few days after, I'm gonna I'm not going to be around to be on I'm not doing radio spots after a certain point. I'm not doing anything for at least a week,
good.
But
good for you. I just wanted to wish you a quick little congratulations on the way out here.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Problem.
And it's going to be good and we'll have some fun with it.
Well, I wish you and your lovely bride the best, and that'll do it for this week's show. Make sure to tweet him a congratulations at Kevin_Durso. And until next week,
couple weeks.
Still not there yet. 2 more weeks. We're not back to the weekly
we're
yet.
Close.
That might be the last one. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll get there.
And until then, we'll see you later.